And so we have to be willing on these issues to have, it takes, I know what it's like to be part of a family with a shame because a cousin's been killed in street violence. Because my uncle was shot, and he was going to testify against some drug dealers. And how do you explain to people that he's not going to be running his company because he's at Prince George's, but no, they can't go see him because there's people trying to kill him trying to go see him too. I know the shame, how my grandmother never referred to the housing projects as the housing projects, or as a housing development. I know all that stuff. But the faster we get to actually having an honest, open conversation as a state, as a community, as a country about what's really going on, the faster we get to the place that we all want our country to be. And I'll show you how hard this can be and yet how necessary it is. On the 10th anniversary of the uprisings in Los Angeles, the riots following the Rodney King, I was with Jack Kemp, former Republican candidate for president. On a stage, the community was celebrating their rebirth. And Jack kept talking about our kids, our kids, our kids, and the need to improve public education. And he was talking about the kids of South LA. He was talking about the kids right down the street. He kept saying, our kids. And this old lady who appeared just the way she moved through the room, everybody knew her in the community, everybody loved her, she'd been her entire life. Where is he from? And I said, I believe he's from upstate New York. I said, but she said, well, then whose kids is he talking about? And I said, man, I get your point, but I believe his point is they are all American children. And we are all American. And they are all our kids. When you look at a country like Singapore, I know it's a long answer, but look at a lot of answers and how I think of this issue, where my conviction comes from. So, I'm in Seoul, South Korea, years ago at this gathering of Asia 21, the Asia Society's gathering for Asian and American leaders under 40. We all got together in Seoul. It was heading into NAACP. The Singaporean delegation was, well, they stuck out for a couple of reasons. One, their country was very wealthy and they presented themselves like that. Two, their delegation had doubled because they brought one dissident and then the government required them to bring a spy for every member of the delegation. And so it was like they had servants in waiting. The actual delegates would walk and behind them would walk spies. The actual delegates spoke, the spies never spoke. And when they spoke too much, the spies would start taking notes. And so you can imagine how awkward that is at a bar. Well, we're in a bar. And 6 of them are getting very drunk, and 6 of them are staying stone cold sober. And the ones who are getting drunk just keep talking about how much they love Singapore, because you would too if there was a spy right behind you going back to a totalitarian regime, right? And so just for some levity, because I was getting bored, I said, it sounds like you're pretty proud of Singapore. The guy said, yes, I am. I said, well, would you humor me and let me speak to you as a proud American for a second? He said, please, sure. I said, 50 years ago, I'm pretty sure our country led the world in K through 12 outcomes. At least the wealthiest economies on the planet. That's the way that it's always been measured. I said, but now, when we look at the list of the world's top 30 economies, not only is Singapore on the list, I'm pretty sure you weren't 50 years ago. But in K through 12 outcomes, you're number 1 or number 2, and we're number 28 or 29. Like, how did you do it? What did you do? How do you do that? And they said, he said 2 things. This first part, well, both of these have been verified different ways since then. He said, a long time ago, we sent some of our nation's best and brightest to Harvard University. And when they came back, we did what they said. You all should try that sometime. He said, but understand this. The difference between how our country's performed cannot be explained by the difference between how our wealthy children. He said, funny thing. You give any group of people on this planet all the resources they need to learn, and they learn about the same the world over. 80% of what we call the racial achievement gap can be explained by the misdistribution of resources in our society. And half of that is high-quality teachers. So no, he said the only way that we can explain the difference is that the gap between how our poor children perform and how is 4 times smaller in our country between them and our rich kids than it is between your poor kids and your rich kids. And what I would say is that in Singapore, and there is a small ethnic group, minority group, but generally speaking, they see all of their country's kids as all of their country's kids, and they educate them like that. And in America, it's not just white, black, it's rich, poor, it's everything else. We throw so many adjectives in front of the word child that we disown damn near every kid in our country before we get around to talking about it. And what Jack Kemp was on to that night was something big, which is that we have to discipline ourselves to see all of our nation's children as all of our nation's children, because they're the only future that we got.
I want to bring you back to economics.
Yes, please.
Maryland's economics.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've thought a lot about it because it's going to be a major part of what you're going to have to do if you win, and explaining how you're going to go about doing it is going to be a major part in deciding whether or not you do win.
Yes.
And part of the problem that you're going to face is explaining to people how you are going to achieve your social goals, your educational goals, your moral goals, and at the same time be able to do it economically.
So let's talk tax policy.
You're a governor,
Yeah.
you're not going to be a president,
Sure.
and you're going to have to confront the fact that I don't like your policies, I take my company across the river.
Sure.
So I like to hear you explain some of that.
Sure. Four points. Just, 3 have to do with tax policy, and 1 I think has to do with how we grow companies. I might back up. But 1, tax policy. Our state decided to give about 250 of the wealthiest families $150 million tax cut in a few years. We've got to close that. That's the exact cost of universal pre-K right there. All right? And I think it's a hard conversation. I don't like raising anybody's taxes, but we got to choose between 250 families that are already fabulously wealthy and a bunch of 4-year-olds whose parents can't afford, like I spend $15,000 a year to send my kids to the YMCA for pre-K. That's what like $1,200 a month is. You do it by 3 or 4, 12 months. Then I'll pick those kids every day. So that's 1. 2, we have a similar, over $100 million that we lose every year because we allow Walmart and companies like that to get away with things here that we don't allow them to get away with, sorry, that Texas won't let them get away from. Which is here we allow them to play a shell game where they can line up all their types of expenses at different corporations and they all zero out. And so they don't pay any state taxes. Texas said, if you're doing business in Texas, you're going to pay state taxes in Texas. And they changed their law. We need to close those loopholes here too. I'm open to and studying an idea that Heather Missouri put on the table when she ran, which is that we tax and regulate pot. Which means that you also have to legalize it too. A friend who graduated from a great criminology school, John Jay. I also did my master's work in criminology. And when I look at marijuana enforcement, I scratch my head. Because I say 75% of American adults have used this. If you look at the enforcement patterns, we pretty much only enforce it on the young, the black, and the brown. We don't tax it, and the profits go now to increasingly transnational drug gangs, which ties to terrorism syndicates. Like, why are we doing it this way? It's pretty hard for me to explain. So that would be, so right there, those 3 is somewhere on $40 or $50, $500 million. That's 1. 2, we actually have to stop just being, there's been this race to the bottom where states invest a lot of money in recruiting corporations to their state, who then demand more and more and more tax breaks. And you talk to the economists and you say, well, is there a better way? So, well, if they could actually build native economies, there's no substitution for the engine that is an economy that's actually working in a state. And so I would say we should take half the money. Still, we're going to need to do some corporate recruiting. We've got to hold some folks here, absolutely. Take the other half of the money. Because when you look at any community that's struggling, it doesn't matter if it's Western Maryland or it's West Baltimore, there is no shortage of small businesses that are looking for easier access to credit, especially in those first 2 or 3 years, before you have 2 years of tax returns that you can show to a bank to get a conventional loan. And we should, as the basically put the state on the side of our small business people, and empower the banks who now using, part of what I invest in is financial services technology that's focused on the underserved. You can use computer programs to better analyze whether a business is a risk than 2 years of tax returns will ever tell, or FICO for that matter. And we should empower our banks to be doing that sort of analysis when a business is 6 months old or 12 months old. And not because there's a lot of companies that die not because they have bad business models, they die because they don't have access to credit. And they're in an industry where people just don't pay you for 3 months. And they can't float for 3 months, so they drown it too. Right. So that's the type of thing, you know, and what you'll see in that is, to me, is that you've got to just keep asking, like, what is best for our state's children, what is best for our state's families, what is best for our state's workers, what is best for our state's businesses.
Okay, well, there's one quick follow-up.
Yeah.
So you convinced me not to run a company across the river, you're going to help me grow here.
Yeah.
But you also said you want to take a lot of money out of my pocket once I get rich. What are you going to do to convince me to keep my living here as opposed to moving to Florida?
You know what? There's some people you just can't keep from living. But I will. I think there's a lot that we can do to make Maryland a safer place to live than Florida. Florida's kind of a wild and crazy state. Yes, right, exactly. That's right, and you know, yes, and the Koch brothers and their approach to building businesses, as my friend here pointed out, may have God on our side when it comes to convincing people not to move to Florida.
Only one thing I would add, a reestablishment of no police obliged.
All right, let's have that conversation after this, because that sounds fascinating. Yep.
So I have 2 questions. One is that when the previous Obama administration was trying to shift the Department of Justice to do away with some of the impact of mandatory minimum,
Yeah.
I was really excited to see that. I'm really concerned about the incarceration of black men and ruination of so many families. And now Jeff Sessions is talking about, you know, war on crime and all that. But my question for you is, I don't understand the laws enough to know what you can do at a state level. So do you have any thoughts on that? And the second is, I used to live in Prince George's County, and I'm kind of a fan of Rusher and Baker, so if you could compare and contrast, because I think he's thinking of running for governor.
Sure. No, look, I have nothing bad to say about Rashawn Baker. What I would say about